Let's talk about divine femininity and divine masculinity as a pagan socialist. Before we actually define these terms, I want to clarify and make note that femininity and masculinity are not necessarily linked to gender. Gender is really a colonized idea. Yes, the indigenous peoples of Americas did represent and sometimes have patterns of gender-like roles and positions, but remember, indigenous cultures are so vast. But overall, in indigenous cultures, we see a respect for both the femininity and masculinity. I see masculinity and femininity as a spiritual pagan in general, as somebody who worships nature. I see divine femininity and masculinity from the plants to the sun to the moon to the ocean, the seasons, the cycles of our earth. So when we look at femininity and masculinity as defined terms that are less colonized and more in tune with the earth, we see that femininity is usually referring to creation, creativity, and intuition, while masculinity is usually more about protection. But then we look at the term divinity or divine, and it usually refers to pleasure or godlike nature. So really what divine femininity means is godlike creativity and godlike intuition. So it now comes in the nuance of understanding that there's very little, if anything, that is 100% feminine or 100% masculine. Everything has both, and that is why the world runs as it does. Everybody has masculine and feminine features, as do the gods. Like I said, I'm pagan, so I believe in polytheism. The gods themselves and goddesses are not 100% feminine or masculine. Of course, you can use pronouns for the gods and goddesses and call them gods and or goddesses as more feminine leaning or more masculine leaning, but they're above the concept of gender. That is a human concept that we use to divide people into categories. But it's important to acknowledge that just like with humans, gods are not 100% either way unless it is stated otherwise. So to bring it back to divine femininity, to develop your divine femininity is actually not to become 100% girly, pink, flowery, but it is to thrive for godlike creativity and godlike intuition.